Dead man found lying on Somerton Beach. Opposite the crippled children's home at 6:30 a.m. today.
When found on Somerton Beach, the man's body was fully clothed and had not been in the water.
Up to noon, police had no clue to his identity. The man was lying on his back against the seawall.
There were no marks of violence or anything else to suggest the cause of death, but all name tags had been removed from the man's clothing.
The legs were crossed and death appeared to have occurred while the man was sleeping.
The mystery of the man's death and identity is now regarded by the police as being almost as baffling as the mystery of the famous Albury Pyjama Girl.
A thorough search of his pockets revealed no papers or anything that would give a clue to his name.
Welcome to Adelaide. A life immersed in unique landscapes and nature awaits you. Vast vineyards stretching as far as the eye can see in the early autumn. Magnificent views of the Murray River and Gambier Mountain. North Terrace Boulevard and the inspiring War Memorial. Adelaide shores in the cool waters of the Southern Ocean. You'll feel reborn.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
The year was 1945. After the Second World War, the Cold War had just begun.
As President of the United States, I proclaim Sunday, September the 2nd, 1945, to be VJ Day. They have signed terms of unconditional surrender. We know that under it we can meet the hard problems of peace which have come upon us. A free people with free allies who can develop an atomic bomb can use the same skill and energy and determination to overcome all the difficulties ahead.
By the time we reached 1948, the world found itself in the midst of the Cold War, fraught with tension from the arms race of nuclear proliferation. Every foreigner was a spy working for secret organizations of enemy nations, and every peculiar incident was attributed to their handiwork.
In recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he openly declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it. If a person consistently reads and advocates the views expressed in a communist publication, he may be a communist. If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States, she may be a communist. But there are other communists who don't show their real faces, who work more silently.
During this chaotic period in the world, a man arrived in Adelaide on the morning of November 30th, 1948. He entered the train station around 11 in the morning with his suitcase. He purchased a ticket to Hanley, but never boarded the train. He left his suitcase at the luggage office in the train station and departed. He then bought a bus ticket to St Leonard and boarded the bus. During the bus journey, he held Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat book in his hand and carefully tore out the final words from the book. In the afternoon, the unidentified man arrived at Mosley Street near Somerton Beach. He reached the door of a house and knocked, but no one answered. After ensuring that no one was home, he began to walk towards Somerton Beach. While walking, he threw the book he was holding through the window of a parked car. He continued towards Somerton Beach and towards his final moments in life.
I'd say he was just a victim of the Cold War and the espionage battle, which in the military intelligence field was at its peak in 1948.
I'd rule out the question of murder, although you can't absolutely dismiss it from your mind.
The sort of standard procedure, or, just something they decided to do, these people had to get rid of this man.
the city's popular main beach area, around 7 p.m., a local jeweler, John Bain, was walking with his family along Somerton Beach when he noticed something unusual. A middle-aged man in a suit was lying on the sand, leaning against the sea wall. The man appeared groggy and was awkwardly trying to smoke a cigarette. Bain thought he was probably drunk. Later, a young couple went for a walk on the beach, Olive and Gordon Straps. They sat on a bench to watch the view and saw a man in a suit lying on the sand.
I didn't see it move, but when we was going, I got a good view of him.
The next morning, December 1st, apprentice jockey Neil Day and his friend found the man in the same position.
And he didn't kind of respond, so Horry Patching hopped off his horse and lifted his leg, and he was stiff.
Sometime during the night, the man had died.
He was clean-shaven with fair hair slightly gray over the temples, hazel eyes, and was wearing a gray and brown double-breasted coat, brown trousers, socks and shoes, and a brown knitted woolen pullover, white shirt and collar, and red, white, and blue tie.
An unused train ticket, a metal comb, a used bus ticket, a Bryant & Mays brand matchbox, a Juicy Fruit brand gum pack, and an Army Club cigarette pack containing different brands of cigarettes were found on the body.
This is the coat, the tie. This is the rest of the clothes that the deceased was wearing. I'll just put those over there as a matter of convenience.
With the arrival of health teams and police, the mysterious body was taken from Somerton Beach to the Royal Adelaide Hospital. The scene on the beach left behind a great mystery, giving rise to dozens of questions. Questions that will remain unanswered for years.
It's a very hard thing to say whether he was a Russian spy or a British intelligence officer or a British defence scientist who turned traitor to his country, or if he was an American intelligence officer who'd been bumped off by the other side, because this was the peak of the Cold War, 1948.
The first person to examine the body was Dr. John Bennett. However, the Somerton man never made it inside the Royal Adelaide Hospital. The examination took place inside the ambulance in which he was brought. The official death report recorded the time of examination as 9:40 in the morning. However, as would later be revealed, the Somerton man had breathed his last around 2 a.m. Following the official death report, he was taken to the West Terrace morgue for autopsy. The autopsy was conducted the next day, on December 2nd, 1948, at 7:30 in the morning by John Dwyer and William Sutherland. The results of the autopsy were as mysterious and puzzling as his identity. Bruises on the body indicated that it had not been moved after death. According to the autopsy, the man's spleen was 3 times larger than normal. His liver was congested and his stomach was filled with blood. No traces of poison were found in his blood, but suspicions arose about undetectable types of poison. His heart was healthy, yet the cause of death was recorded as heart failure in the records. The following day, on December 3rd, police photographer James Durham took the famous autopsy photographs of the Somerton man and collected his fingerprints. These fingerprints would later be sent across Australia in hopes of finding any records. On Friday, December 10th, 1948, Laurie Elliott embalmed the Somerton man. The number of people coming to confirm his identity was so high that embalming was seen as a necessary procedure to prevent further decomposition during this time. Months later, a plastic bust was made by Paul Lawson. It was personally shown by Lawson in the museum, and efforts to reach any of his relatives continued. According to Lawson, most of the visitors truly did not know the man, but some seemed to pretend. In fact, they knew who the Somerton man was.
I mean, what you suggest to me is that there's somebody who obviously did know him.
No, I'm suggesting that the people that came eliminated features and then decided that they didn't know him.
But not everyone.
It's possible. I don't know.
On January 14th, 1949, detectives working on the investigation, Lionel Lean and Leonard Brown, discovered the Somerton man's suitcase at the Adelaide railway station based on items found on the body. It was unopened and untouched. Upon opening it, they found numerous clothes and personal items, and a name, T. Keane. While this name seemed like an answer to the mystery man's identity, it actually led the detectives into a long and fruitless pursuit. Labels as we know them today didn't exist back then, and sometimes people would write their names on the labels of clothes. Also, since second-hand shopping was common, it was likely that the Somerton man had bought some of his clothes second-hand. The name, T. Keane, could have belonged to the previous owner, or even the owner before that. Drawing a conclusion from this was impossible, and proved to be a waste of time. It was a dead end for the detectives. On April 5, 1949, a letter was written to John Burton Cleland, a professor of pathology and bacteriology at the University of Adelaide, requesting his assistance in the examinations. According to Cleland's findings, the threads in the suitcase matched the threads on the man's clothes. The clothes in the suitcase and the man's body were identical. The man's fingernails and toenails were healthy and well maintained. His clothes were almost new, and his shoes were freshly polished. Among these findings, the most mysterious thing Cleland found was a small rolled-up piece of paper in the man's pocket. On it was written Tamam Shud, meaning ended. But where did this piece of paper come from? This question takes some time to be answered. First of all, it was necessary to find out which book this font and text belonged to, among thousands of books and thousands of different editions. And it was found.
The words Tamam Shud, he said, find a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, and he said you'll find that some versions of it ends in Tamam, and he said some end with Tamam Shud.
Frank Kennedy identified this writing as belonging to a book by Omar Khayyam. The book was a collection of poems called Rubaiyat. But where was the book?
Either a doctor or I think it may have been a chemist had his car parked in Jetty Road, Glenelg, near the Pier Hotel, and he had discovered this book in his car, had been thrown into his car.
The relationship between the book and Tamam Shud was shared in the media on June 9th, 1949. For a long time, no results were obtained. However, on July 22nd, 1949, a man came forward with a Rubaiyat book, the last words torn out. He claimed to have found the book on the back seat of his car. He hadn't thought there was any evidence. Thinking it belonged to one of his relatives, he had kept the book at home, until he saw the news about the torn last page of the book and the investigation, though the gap of the words indicating the end of the book didn't exactly match the small, rolled-up paper of the Somerton man. But the examination revealed that the piece belonged to this book. This was the Rubaiyat of the Somerton man, the last book he read, the book he threw through the window of a parked car. However, the investigation regarding Tamam Shud and the book had already been conducted and concluded on June 21st. So the book was never mentioned in the investigation. The body of the Somerton man was hastily buried on June 14th, 1949, after the completion of the plaster bust made by Paul Lawson for display in the museum. The arrival of the book took the investigation to a whole new level. Inside the book were found 2 phone numbers written by the Somerton man. Could these numbers solve the case?
Here's a clipping here from the Adelaide Advertiser of July the following year, and this mentions the police interest in a woman in Adelaide.
The first number belonged to a local bank, yielding no results. However, the other number belonged to a local woman, and this woman would lead the detectives down a much more mysterious path.
And I eventually located the phone number that was on the back of the Rubaiyat.
And on the back is a phone number of a local 20 7-year-old lady who had trained as a nurse.
The phone number belonged to Jo Thompson, also known by her other name, Jestin. The first known mystery in Jo Thompson's life was that her high school friend's mother was a member of the Communist Party. Jo had spent her adolescence very close to her friend and her family. Did these years truly influence her thoughts and decisions?
You pretty much do accept that she was a spy.
I think so, yes.
There was spies everywhere, spy on spy, everywhere.
In the following years, Jo began her nursing training at the Royal North Shore Hospital in Sydney. In August 1945, at a party at the Clifton Gardens Hotel, she met Alf Boxall and gifted him a Rubaiyat book. It had a note and a signature of Jestin. While continuing her nursing training, she discovered she was pregnant and decided to leave her education to return to her family. She met George Thompson and moved to Adelaide. The days when Jestin would be known as Jo Thompson were approaching. In 1947, her first child, Robin Thompson, was born. The door that Somerton Man knocked on November 30th, 1948, would be knocked on again by detectives on July 26th, 1949.
Have you given any rubaiyats to any men? Have you given a copy to anybody? And she said, well, yes, I have actually. I gave one to a guy called Alf Boxall.
She's not sure if it was the same man, and she's not sure if the man on the beach is the man she gave the book to. But the police think that it's a bit coincidental that there is the link between the two, you know. So there's possibly a good example of an affair of the heart there.
Upon Jo Thompson's mention of gifting the Rubaiyat book, detectives speculated that Somerton Man could be Alf Boxall.
That I was obviously the person referred to by somebody in Adelaide, and the fact that I was there and still alive completely upset their apple cart, and they were very displeased.
Alf Boxall was a former intelligence officer, and this friendship was adding further mystery to Jo Thompson.
Did you hear about a body being found on the beach in Adelaide? And well, quite candidly, I wasn't sure, because I wasn't particularly concerned about a body being found on the beach in Adelaide.
The man on the beach was a spy of some kind.
It's quite a melodramatic thesis, isn't it?
On July 26, 1949, Jo Thompson was taken from her home and brought to the museum to see the bust of Somerton Man. Here, her behaviour was also suspicious and mysterious.
She was brought in, stood about here. Detective Lean was over there, and the other two detectives each side of him over there. I moved over at Lean's request and took the covering off the bust cast. Stood back, and Mrs. Thompson took one look at that bust and then looked down, and she didn't look up at that again for the whole interview. Detective Lean was asking her questions, but they were all of no, I don't remember the questions, but everything was no, she wouldn't give any information if she did know it.
It was determined that Somerton Man was not Alf Boxall. When contacted, it was found that the mentioned gift, Rubaiyat, was still in Boxall's possession. It had a note signed by Jestin, and its pages were intact. However, all these events would raise unanswered questions about the nature of the relationship between Jo Thompson and Somerton Man. These questions would remain unanswered. Jo Thompson never spoke about this matter. However, years later, her daughter Kate Thompson would also express belief in all these theories.
She told the police that she didn't know who he was, and certainly I know nothing.
And yet she told you that she did.
And she told me that it was a mystery that was only known to a level higher than the police force.
that in some way or somewhere or at some time, they both knew one another.
The only mystery emerging from the book was not just Joe Thompson. The complex series of letters written by Somerton Man also remained uncertain. Were these letters encoding a hidden message? In an attempt to decipher this code, contact was made with the Navy. However, despite all efforts, no results were obtained. Either the message was truly well encrypted, or it was not a message at all. In either case, the identity of these letters was never determined. The Somerton Man case remained unsolved, leaving unanswered questions for years. The investigation remained open, and the file grew cold over time until 2009, when Professor Derek Abbott, along with his students, decided to delve into the identity of the Somerton Man. Initially, Derek Abbott and his students focused on the letters found with the body. However, as was the case many years ago, when a definitive result could not be obtained, it was concluded that these letters were not part of any code.
Here is the Somerton Man's so-called code. It looks like a bunch of letters that no one can understand.
The next focus would be on identifying the Somerton Man himself. On March 19, 2009, Professor Abbott checked the 1948 and 1949 Adelaide University pathology autopsy reports to see if there was any record related to the Somerton Man. However, no record was found. Additionally, the collection of notes by Cleland at the Bar Smith Library, which he checked, contained no information regarding the case. The next point of investigation would be the coroner's office. When he visited the coroner's office on April 15, 2009, he found that there was no autopsy report for the Somerton Man. His investigation was unfortunately hitting dead ends. On April 28, 2009, with the help of Monsieur Henneberg, a professor of anatomy at the University of Adelaide, they reached their first tangible lead, an anomaly in the Somerton Man's ear structure. With the discovery of another anomaly in dental structure on May 5, 2009, the groundwork for linking the Somerton Man to Robin Thompson was laid.
Professor Abbott asked me to look at the teeth and the ear of Somerton Man and compare to the same features of the person who is supposed to be his son. I found that they are similar. The Somerton Man's earlobe is attached to the skin of his face. It does not hang down, and the lobe of the ear of this younger man is also attached to his face. We know from descriptions that the Somerton Man was missing both lateral incisors, and the young man misses both lateral upper incisors, and the person suggested to be his son are actually related.
From then on, albeit not definitive, the possibility that Robin Thompson was the son of the Somerton Man strengthened significantly. Professor Abbott's research started off somewhat unlucky. Joe Thompson had passed away 2 years prior, and the only known person who could contribute to the investigation, Robin Thompson, had also passed away a few months before Professor Abbott began his research. The only thing Abbott could do was to continue the investigation based on assumptions, and so he did.
After I'd found that Robin had died, that was unlucky and sad. So then I thought, well, does he have any descendants? So it turned out he did, and that's when I located Rachel, his daughter.
Assuming that Robin Thompson was born from the relationship between the Somerton Man and Joe Thompson, Professor Abbott attempted to reach living relatives. He discovered that Robin's wife's name was Roma Egan, and they had a daughter named Rachel Egan. Rachel could potentially be the granddaughter of the Somerton Man.
So based on everything I looked at in this case, I developed a hypothesis that the Somerton Man and Joe Thompson knew each other. They had a child, Robin Thompson, and if this is the case, then his daughter Rachel is the granddaughter of the Somerton Man.
He sent a letter to Rachel Egan expressing his desire to discuss the research. Shortly after their meeting, Derek Abbott and Rachel Egan got married in 2010.
People would say, I just married her for her DNA, and we would laugh about it. So, yeah, that is funny.
By 2015, Professor Abbott still needed the Somerton man's DNA to continue the research. He obtained it from hair samples on a plastic bust made in 1949. However, these remnants were 70 years old, and only about 2% of the required DNA amount could be extracted. Professor Abbott and the experts assisting him needed a more concentrated sample, perhaps from the Somerton man's tooth or ear bone. However, all these samples had been buried in 1949, and the permissions required for their extraction would take a long time to obtain. During this time, Professor Abbott continued to hold seminars and campaigns to exhume the Somerton man. Finally, on May 19, 2021, the necessary procedures were completed and the Somerton man was exhumed.
First to a major development in one of South Australia's most enduring mysteries as we go to where police and forensic scientists are exhuming the remains of the Somerton man.
His remains now in the hands of forensic detectives who will use cutting-edge techniques to try to finally determine who he was and just maybe end decades of public intrigue.
After a day-long, delicate operation to dig up the remains of the man whose identity has remained a mystery for 73 years, attention has now turned to what information those remains might yield.
It's important for everybody to remember the Somerton man's not just a curiosity or a mystery to be solved. It's somebody's father, son, perhaps grandfather, uncle, brother, and that's why we're doing this.
It's important to the public. It's been of academic interest. It's been studied. It's been investigated. And we hope with this opportunity there will be some resolution.
After obtaining the required amount of DNA, Professor Abbott contacted a specialist genealogist living in the United States, Colleen Fitzpatrick. Like Derek Abbott, she was excited by the Somerton man case and agreed to help. Colleen Fitzpatrick's expertise lay in tracing relatives through people's DNA. There was an internet site where people voluntarily provided DNA samples to create a database.
Ever wanted to explore your family tree, learn more about your ancestors, or identify your ethnic background? First, take a DNA test and download the results as a DNA data file.
Now, as far as unidentified human remains, violent crimes, in other words, forensic cases, it's really been a game changer.
There were enough samples of Somerton man's DNA. The next step was to compare this DNA with other DNAs in the database. After long and exhaustive checks, a name emerged: Jack Hargreaves.
So the blue is showing you here a very significant matching, and this is huge here on chromosome 22.
A family tree was constructed based on Jack Hargreaves. They also had another name in their hands, T. Keane, written on the Somerton man's tie. Collins was certain that the Somerton man had a history related to the name Keane, so they decided to pursue it. To solve the mystery of the Somerton man, they also needed to unravel the mysteries of many family histories. Some names had no history, some had different parental names, and some names didn't even have records. After extensive research, the connection between the name Keane and Jack Hargreaves emerged. Along with this connection, they would also encounter the name Carl Webb.
And to prove it, what we had to do was see who his mother was, then tunnel down the family tree just on the mother's side only, and find somebody alive today and see if their DNA matches or not. And that turned out to be somebody in Victoria by the name of Antero.
They contacted Antero, and a DNA sample was compared with that of the Somerton man.
So when Antero's DNA came through and it was a match to the Somerton man, it was at this point that we knew that Charles Webb was the Somerton man.
I am 100% convinced that we have the right guy. Charles Webb is a Somerton man.
We'd finally cracked it. So there was a great feeling of elation,
dampened by being totally exhausted at this stage.
Charles Webb was born in 1905 in Footscray, Victoria. His real name mentioned in the investigation was Carl Webb. He grew up in Springvale, Victoria, and spent his youth working in the Webb family bakery. As he grew older, he became an electric toolmaker. He married Dorothy Robertson in 1941. However, not long after, a divorce case initiated by Dorothy was recorded. According to the reasons cited by Dorothy for the divorce, Carl was both violent and depressive. He had no close friends that she knew of. He left home in April 1948. It is not known what he was doing or why he came to Adelaide until he was found dead on Somerton Beach. He departed from this world, leaving behind thousands of questions. At least now, thanks to Derek Abbott and those who helped him, we know one answer. His name was Charles Webb.